Welcome everyone to the annual Electors meeting for the City of Subiaco. I declare the meeting open at 5:30 p.m. Welcome everyone. On behalf of the City of Subiaco, I respectfully acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional custodians of this area, and I recognise their cultural connection to the land and waterways of Subiaco. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the contents of the annual report and annual financial statements for 2022 and 2023. We'll take questions from the floor, take questions that were submitted on notice, and we'll discuss any other general business. I've got some housekeeping rules here, but I'm going to skip those, gentlemen. We'll move on to attendances. I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Russell Jones, Councillor Gary Kosovich, Councillor Nicola Johnston, Councillor Penny O'Connor, Councillor Rick Powell, and I don't think we had an apology from Councillor Simon White earlier today, and Councillor De Vries and Councillor Burns are unaccounted for as far as I know. I know we did have an apology from Councillor De Vries. Okay. We've also got an apology from Lloyd Gorman from the Post. As we know, Lloyd makes an effort to attend most of our meetings, if not all of them, and he was very, very deliberate in asking for his apology to be recorded, so we'll make sure that it is. Okay, look, I did have some announcements prepared, but I just feel like they might be better saved for next week's OCM. It's only a few days away, so I think anything that happens between now and then can be added to what I was going to say tonight. Thank you, comms team, anyway, for being here. Sorry I can't give you more tonight. Let's get on to the business of the evening. The annual report for 2022-2023 and audited financial statements. The annual report and financial statements include the Mayor's report, the CEO's report and the Auditor's report. So they're submitted for consideration. They were, of course, approved by Council this week, actually, Tuesday of this week at the Special Council meeting. So what I'll ask for is a mover and a seconder that the annual report, including the financial statements for 2022-2023, for the 2022-2023 financial year and auditor's report be received. So I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, Mr. Peter McDonald, and a seconder, Mark Tonti. Those of you who are eligible to vote, could you please raise your hand? We'll call that unanimously carried with 2 votes. Public question time. We've got one prior submission from Peter McDonald of Onslow Road, Shenton Park. Mr. McDonald.
Good evening, Mayor, councillors and staff. My name is Peter McDonald. I live in Onslow Road in Shenton Park in South Ward, and I operate a business in Churchill Avenue in Subiaco in East Ward. My questions relate to the seemingly mundane subject of car parking. Question 1. On the 15th of October 2023, Standards Australia issued a media release on Standard 2890.1 2004 parking facilities for off-street car parking, in which they recommended an increase in the length of off-street car parking spaces from 5.4 metres to 5.6 metres. They had public consultation on this measure, and the consultation closed 9th of November 2023. In the media release, Standards Australia noted that the revision is due to the trend to larger vehicles in Australian roads since the original standard was issued in 2004. Most notably large SUVs in suburbia. In the Standards Australia media release, they also noted that state and local authorities may have their own requirements in town and area planning regulations and development control plans, but that courts normally consider Australian standards as prevailing documents. The question is, for planning purposes, does the City consider the Standards Australia recommended increase in the size of off-street car parking spaces to 5.6 metres to be a seriously entertained planning scheme, amendment or document?
Thank you. Director of Development Services, did you want to answer that?
Thank you, Councillor Jones, and thank you for your question, Mr McDonald. Now, it's a good question, but the planning framework considers the amount of parking. It doesn't actually detail the dimensions which are in the Australian standards. And that's a good thing, because as standards change and when planning applications are considered across time, we don't actually have to amend our planning scheme. So the planning scheme will say how much parking is needed, and there's a technical engineering assessment on whether that parking meets the relevant Australian standard at that time. So we don't need any planning amendments, and it's not a seriously entertained planning proposal because it's not a planning change. It just automatically gets considered through the engineering review.
Thank you. Mr McDonald, your question 2.
My second question is, if the currently proposed revision to the Australian standard on off-street car parking to increase the parking space length to 5.6 metres is finalised in the new Australian standards, does the city intend to implement and enforce that standard for all new off-street car parking spaces in the city that are managed or regulated by the city?
Director of Development Services.
Actually, I think I'll take this one from Alex. So thank you for your question, Peter. So the city uses Australian standards along with other relevant design standards of the time to design and modify the city's car parks. So should this proposed revision to Australian standards become adopted, the city would apply it to new car parking spaces as a matter of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the floor? Okay, we'll consider public question time at a close and we'll move on to motions. Are there any motions from the floor? Mr Tonti. If you could dress it up as a motion, that would be very helpful.
Just take the opportunity that, because I'm here, we've had a brilliant council for the last year and the year before as well, but particularly last year was probably the best council that I've seen in Subiaco in probably 40 years. An excellent job, and I did try and make some comments at the time of the election because we lost some very good councillors at that time, and I think the level of debate and the input from our staff has been absolutely brilliant. So from where I sit in the community and others that I mix with in the community, thank you very much for all that you've done. And certainly I welcome the new councillors. You've got a hard act to follow from the last 12 months, but you're led very well by David. So hopefully we continue the way we've been going. And I think tonight just proves just how well this council's running. What, 2 old seasoned community people here and nobody else? It's absolutely great. Thank you. That's a motion.
Mr Tonti, if you wanted to move that we note that, I could ask for a seconder. All those in favour of the motion that we note Mr Tonti's comments, that the electors note the comments. We'll call that unanimously carried with 2 votes. Thank you, gentlemen. Is there any other business from the floor? In that case, that brings us to the end of the agenda. I declare the City of Subiaco annual electors meeting for 2023 closed at 5:40 p.m. Please feel free to stay back for some refreshments and light conversation with elected members and staff. Thank you, staff, for your support. Thank you, councillors, for coming along and supporting also.